Right. Is it already live? It is. Okay. Welcome back to the fourth part of me working on an industrial techno track. Last week we ended up with making a percussion, so I made a note to myself that it doesn't align with the pads. When I was listening to that beat, I thought that I think that it's because the percussion itself is not repetitive enough. So that's the first thing I'm going to fix. After that, percussion will need again some equalization. So we will start out with equalizing the distorted cymbal and all the hi-hats group. Some additional processing to come later. And after that, the percussion should be finished. So we will want to add some other atmospheric sound, whether it's a lead or some bass line. But at first, onto the repetitive pattern. I think the second hi-hat that is here, or the first hi-hat, no, that was the second hi-hat. Definitely this sound should be played more in a more repetitive manner. But do not overpower this beat with this hi-hat because it's a very characteristic sounds. I'm going to again play around with the velocity. I would like these notes to be less audible than others. That already fixes a bit the repetitiveness. So the other sound that could be played also more often is probably the cymbal itself. If I turn it on and off now, it's basically the sound that needs to be played more often. Or maybe it's not the cymbal, it's some other hi-hat from here. Now I just have to find the sounds that are playing once or twice in the whole beat, and the sounds that I think I would like to play more often. And from what I see in the MIDI clip, this could be the first hi-hats, but we can just turn on and off each of these individual hi-hat sounds to see how to, say, change the percussion pattern. Second hi-hat could be played a bit faster here. Let's try this pattern. It did sound bad, so I'm not going to change the second hi-hat. Okay, I have to check out the hi-hats 3 and 4 yet. And these are the last hi-hats in the MIDI clip I will want to change. The first hi-hat, even though is played only twice throughout this 2-beat long loop. It's a quiet sound, so it doesn't change, it doesn't add much to the rhythm. The second hi-hat was already improved, so I think we only want to change this pattern. We will be changing the notes in the MIDI clip in both of these hi-hat sounds because they are playing together. One of the hi-hats is just a layer for either the hi-hat 4 or hi-hat 3. I don't remember whether it's the hi-hat 4 that supports the hi-hat 3, or if it's the hi-hat 3 that is a layer for the hi-hat 4. And now the whole percussion is more repetitive, maybe also sounds a bit more full, but now this sort of rhythm should sound better with the pads. And this is indeed the truth. Aside from just stuffing a few more MIDI notes in the clip, what I had to do was also to change the velocity in some of them. Because last week when I was creating this percussion pattern, some hi-hats were supposed to be played with lower volume to not make the pattern too repetitive. So last week I was using less velocity in some moments of the MIDI clip to make the pattern more rhythmic, but today I'm doing the opposite. I want the percussion to sound more repetitive, so I also had to bring some of the velocity levels up. With that done, I can start equalizing everything, and again, I'm gonna start equalizing at first the whole percussion group. After a glue compressor that already glues the whole percussion. Maybe let's play it without the pad so it will be easier to hear. So the whole percussion group, so the drum rack with hi-hats and the simple sound that is here synthesized will be equalized together at first. As usual, the very first thing I could do is to, well, get rid of the low end. I don't want to overlap the low end from the hi-hats with the low end from the kick drum. A high pass filter is adjusted. Now I should use again the low and high shelf filters to tell the balance between low, mid, and high frequencies. Though I just forgot to at first adjust more precisely the volume of the hi-hats in relation to the kick drum. Because right now I think the hi-hats are simply a bit too loud. The problem with equalizing anything before adjusting the volume levels is that if, for example, I leave the hi-hats to be too loud, then later in the equalization when I will want to use a high shelf filter, probably I would have to remove the high frequencies more than necessary just because the hi-hats were initially too loud. If I used at first a volume control and turned down the volume of the hi-hats to a more appropriate level, then in the equalization I would have to do a bit less of the work. This is going to result in not only in an easier job, but also in a more natural sound. Three decibels is quite a lot. So this change was something that I needed indeed. Okay. I can quickly try out a high cut that is still pretty high, somewhere at around 16K. So the deal is that by removing some of the highest frequencies, so again, the so-called air from the sound, I might get a cleaner percussion sound. The same thing was shown by Gewalt when he was creating Schwan's track from scratch. This live stream is also on my channel, so you can watch it in maybe the other day. But Gewalt in his live stream was also doing a similar thing, that is placing on percussion loops a low pass filter placed at 14K to make the percussion just a bit cleaner. I'm going to try the same thing now. And in a bit more extreme example, the change in the sound could be following. I guess I'm going to leave the filter like that. The change in the sound is going to be almost unnoticeable, but as you have heard earlier with a more extreme example, we cut a bit of that highest noise from the hi-hats, and this helps, again, making them sound more clean. And now I can move on to using high shelf and low shelf filters. Let me quickly see on a reference how bright the hi-hats should be on average. Once again, to avoid any problems with copywriting, the reference track is routed outside of the master channel, so you are not going to hear it. But it's going to take me a second. Okay, I feel like I should make my own hi-hats here a bit darker. So now, to do that, I'm going to just use a high shelf filter. Let's put a considerable amount of attenuation, and at first let's find a frequency spectrum that should be turned down in volume. Okay, from what I see, I'm going to make a small cut at this frequency range. If so, then instead of using a high shelf filter, I can just bring down the Q value on the low pass filter and it's going to give me nearly the same result. But adjusting just a single control will be easier than adjusting a whole new filter. Just like that. On the other hand, on the opposite end, let's try using now a low shelf filter. Probably, I'm not sure yet how I'm gonna use it. Whether I will want to boost the mids or not. Let's see what we can expect from the low shelf filter like that. Alright, in solo it will be a bit easier to hear, but making a cut with a low shelf filter will help making the hi-hats a bit cleaner, and I feel that's something I should do now. There's a bit of hollowness and some resonances in individual hi-hat sounds that I'm gonna equalize a bit later when I will start to equalize individual hi-hat elements. But now we are inside of a group equalization that will make the most impact, that will give the most impact to the percussion. So now I'm just gonna stick to the low shelf filter. Let's keep the Q value like that. Once again, because it will be easier to hear the difference in solo, let's solo the percussion for a while and listen to the change in the sound. So it's a quite easy way to make the hi-hat sound more clean. And in that frequency range, what we are going to hear more than is the kick drum, the pad sounds, more space will be available now for these other sounds. Now it would be time for a bit more precise adjustments, so as usual I have to bring a peak filter like that and try to find whether something has to be cut or boosted. Alright, my opinion, nothing needs to be boosted. Now I'm going to do the same with an attenuation. So let's see if I want to cut something or not. And the first thing I'm gonna do is to make a cut at 7.k. Now with this attenuation here, the hi-hats are going to sparkle less, so it will make them sound less annoying. Alright, the sparkle from the hi-hats is cut. And that way then. Thanks Filippo, clean AF. Yeah, that's because I'm simultaneously mixing the track while sound design and the sounds equalization is the most tiresome part of the production, so I don't want to do all the equalization at single moments. When I'm mixing the track, I prefer to spread it out and equalize anything I create to the sound. I create in the track at the same moment, so it makes the mixing process a bit more pleasant. Alright, let's try to look for some other frequencies to cut. Now we will sweep through the upper mids. So I'm still looking for the frequencies that can make the hi-hats a bit annoying. In other words, any sort of swooshes, shh, and other kind of sounds. And they quite often are somewhere in the range from 2K, maybe to 6 and 7K. Now I found something at 4K, so if we listen to that's what does this swoosh sound like. This is exactly what we are going to cut. Yeah, I also think that's the best way to mix. By the way, you can give a Exofora once again a shout out. He made a great tutorial about screech leads. Maybe you have already watched through the whole thing because I uploaded the video at 2 p.m. Also, if you have some very quick questions to Exofora, maybe if he still watches the stream, you can ask him right now on the stream. Also remember that Exofora is having his DJ debut. I don't know how to spell that, but he's going to play in some festival in Netherlands in next 2 weeks with guys from Falsive Records, if I remember well. Anyways, good luck. Another very typical EQ region to cut in the hi-hats to get rid of any other, again, low-pitched noise is the 2K range. Here the resonances sound like this. So that's another way to keep cleaning the hi-hats. And again, the change in the sound is following. Let's keep sweeping through the frequency spectrum. And the next equalization move is going to be very subtle. 1K range. Personally, I don't cut it very often because it's a very important range for percussion to, well, make the mix sound fuller. If I make a cut here, if I just compare the percussion with and without that cut, I can simply hear the percussion sound is getting a bit more empty, maybe less weak in other words. But on the other hand, somewhere making a cut somewhere at 700 Hz is going to sound better. But because now we are equalizing the mid frequencies, it will be a bit more difficult to hear the change in the sound. So let's see at first how is that going to sound like when percussion is soloed. And there's a high chance this will be the last filter here in equalizer to be used, because it will be even more difficult to hear any equalization on the hi-hats in the range from 100 to 400. Maybe we could as well just not touch this range, this frequency range. Okay, in that way, now let's see what does the whole percussion sounds with and without this whole equalizer. Ah yeah, I will just quickly see whether we need to cut somewhere in the lows, but as I have said, there's a high chance that this is not going to be useful, because the difference in the sound will be inaudible. Exactly, just as I thought. Maybe we can add just a decibel to the output, because mostly what we have been doing to the hi-hats was removing the frequencies. Actually, we didn't boost any frequency region once. So on average, the whole percussion is going to be a bit quieter after equalization. And to compare better the sound before and after using an EQ, I can use just a bit of output gain. And now I can turn on and off the whole EQ. So yeah, most of that sparkle was removed, but it doesn't mean the hi-hats are going to sound worse. Well, if when I listen again to the reference track I have in my project, or if I listen to just any other hard techno track, mostly percussion sounds are very clean and they don't have lots of sparkle either. Okay, and having all these attenuations done, I'm gonna readjust the volume level of the hi-hats. Because there are quite a lot of other sounds in the percussion to be equalized, and maybe let's do it in a way that I'm gonna finish equalizing the cymbal sound. If I find some adjustments, once I do that, we will switch back to a bit of sound design to maybe create some lead or bassline sound. But let's take another look at the cymbal equalization right here. The changes in the sound here will be, again, subtle. I just want to refine the EQ settings. But I also have to admit that revising equalization settings like that, it's just part of my perfectionism. That's the part of the music production I hate. I don't like going through the equalization. I feel like it's taken so much time for me, but well, on the other hand, we have so many things to control here. Once again, I will sweep here through the frequency spectrum, again to see if I want to boost or cut something. I will cut even more sparkle from the cymbal itself, but again, when I'm equalizing individual percussion sounds instead of the whole percussion group, it will be a bit more and more difficult to hear the changes in the sound, so these changes might be also a bit less important. Let's try another filter. And I don't have anything more to say about the simple equalization. Alright, as promised, let's move away a bit from the EQ. to create some sound. I'm not sure yet if I want to make a bass sound, like a Reese bass, or some lead sound, because in the end it would be nice to have some melodic element in the track, but let me play the hi-hats with the pad sound to imagine what I should add. Well, a Reese bass, a distorted Reese bass would be a very safe option, though I'm still eager to try out making some pad sound, or not a pad sound, but some lead. While I don't have any particular idea from the lead, something might emerge when I start tweaking the knobs inside of the wavetable. Usually I improvise a sound design and synthesizers when I don't have anything very generic or typical to create. I play around with the wavetables, and once something starts to sound cool, that's when I keep developing the sound further. So if it's about making a bit original sound of the lead, maybe, yeah, let's try something other than the basics category of wavetables. Let's play the pad and sound. Okay, if I wanted to make a lead sound regardless of the wavetable, it could be useful to make the sound a bit smoother, so I can already turn on the unison feature. And now I can keep checking out other wavetables. My idea is to at first create some sort of a Reese-like sound with this wavetable. And on the second oscillator, I could try to use a different waveform. Oh, that JN60 beater sounded cool if I just play it somewhere just like that. Let's see how these two would sound together. That seems to sound pretty sick. So I'm going to continue with that sound. And I can already create some sequence or pattern. If I randomly play notes, it doesn't seem like it is the kind of sound from which I could create a, I don't know, melody or even an arpeggiated sound. Uh, and just to be sure, I can quickly throw an arpeggiator. Probably it's going to sound very bad. I don't want my track to sound like a ice cream car jingle. So a single sustained note or maybe a single chord, something simple should sound fine enough. But yeah, the wavetable is being a bit too loud. What I'm trying to find now is the root key for my melody, so at what pitch should the lead sound I create be played? Okay, it's going to be either G or G sharp. Let's add the kick drum to see how it's going to fit with the kick drum. Okay, let's try G sharp at first. I can always change the pattern. So we have the lead sound being repetitive. Maybe let's make this MIDI note twice as long. This MIDI clip. And I can expand the whole wavetable view now to, well, refine the sound. The first thing I will set up is the oscillators only. So maybe I can once again try a few other wavetables, and I will adjust the wavetable position controls. This will dictate most of the sound for the lead. I can as well detune the oscillators to give the sound even more modulation, even more background. That's the things I'm going to do at first. And yeah, to have a better perspective, to have some idea on what does the lead is going to fit with the pad sound, I will have to play the pad sound in the background. But maybe let's play, yes, a smaller selection of the beat. The pad should be still a bit quieter. And coming back to the oscillators. Let's try also detuning a bit these two oscillators. Maybe this will be a bit difficult to hear when the pad is in the background. So let's turn it off for a second. I like the detune. It makes the sound a bit smoother. Let's add it. Now onto the warping section. Let's see whether the FM modulation or any other type of warping will fit either of these oscillators. Here we will use some pulse width modulation. And moving on to the oscillator 2, we will try again whether warping sounds cool or not here. But all of the changes in the warping and the oscillator B and the oscillator 2 are making this oscillator more brighter. It adds more high frequencies. This is something I don't need. Let's adjust now the volume levels of these two oscillators and maybe add some stereo width by panning. Actually, the panning trick is something I'm going to try at first. Let's use let's use smaller amounts of detune, I mean of panning. And I'm going to keep the sounds oscillators in center. It doesn't, of course, mean that the whole sound will be still in mono, because on the bottom I'm still using unison detune, so regardless of whether I use the panning or not, stereo width will be there. Now let's adjust the volume levels here of both oscillators, and soon we will think of adding a sub oscillator to the sound. Now let me try using the sub oscillator as well. And the problem with the sound is that I can't pitch the sub oscillator higher than that. I can't see if pitching up the if the sub oscillator could sound better if it was pitched higher, because I can only change the, well, pitch of the sub oscillator down. Good night to you, Alpha, as well. See you soon. If I want to see how the sub oscillator is going to sound like when it's even higher, I have to increase the pitch of the sound here, but on the other hand, we have to change the pitch of the sound in both oscillator 1 and 2. And I think the sub oscillator here sounds lame. It simply distracts away from the sound I've created already with these two oscillators, as I say, are going to sound much more interesting than just a single sine wave or a square wave, because that's what does the sub oscillator in the wavetable can add. So not always, it's not, so more oscillators don't always mean a better sound. Let's readjust the unison detune section, and from now on, and then we will add, well, the amplitude modulation. I will adjust the volume envelope, and later I'm going to play around with the filters, so it's the part of the wavetable since I use very rarely. I don't want this lead to be very smooth, so instead of using lots of unison voices like that, I'm going to be using 4 unison voices to keep the sound somewhat sharp. Just a quick overview of different unison modes in the wavetable. Let's turn off the pad sound. The most commonly used detune modes are probably the classic and shimmer. They are going to remind a lot of what you can hear in Serum Synthesizer when you use the unison section. So more original sounds can be made by using either of these four remaining detune modes. For example, with the noise one, it's easy to squeeze more noise into the sound. But I don't need that, and instead of that, I'm going to use the phase sync mode. What does it do is that it makes each oscillator start from the same initial phase, meaning that in the very beginning, we are going to hear a quite pronunciated laser kind of effect, some sort of a zap sound. Comparing that to the classic unison mode. And this sort of a zap effect is something I want to use. I think this fits this lead sound well. So I will stick to that. I'm not working on mobile. It is so zoomed in because I'm using... let me open the Ableton preferences. In the look field, there's a zoom display control. Yes, I was thinking that it would be good to zoom in quite much in Ableton, because if someone watches the stream on the phone or maybe on a smaller window, everything will be easier to see. Of course, I'm not sure whether that is a setting that is too high, but previously I was getting a few comments that sometimes I can't see the details. So yeah, that's thanks to the zoom display feature that you can see the stream well on the phone. So I'm glad it works well. The unison is adjusted now. I thought of, yes, the volume envelope, because I have the zap effect coming from the unison detune. Probably adding some attack would not make sense, because then we would get rid of that zap effect. So let's keep the attack down to 0. The main question will be whether I want to keep the volume of the sound flat or not, and that's something I'm going to adjust with both decay and sustain. From what do I hear? A little bit of rhythm here sounds well. It enhances, it makes that zap effect more pronounced. So let's use a bit of decay and sustain to make the synthesizer volume drop in time fairly quickly. At last, there's a release knob that I have to adjust manually just like that. I would like the sound to end pretty fast, I think. Something like that. Okay, there are some modulations we can try, aside from the filter modulations. That means I have to attach, yes, I have to start using a filter and the other envelope. I can also try using an envelope on maybe the pitch. That would be something very typical to use. The envelope can be also attached sometimes to wavetable position controls in oscillators to make the sound itself more interesting. The second envelope can be adjusted quickly like that, and at first I will attach this envelope to filters. A filter modulation like that could sound okay when we arrange a track, and if I wanted the synthesizer to be played somewhere, maybe in the breakdown, where I would like the sound to be less powerful. So I can make a note to myself about that. But in a main beat, it would sound worse if I take away the power from the high frequencies by using a low pass filter like that. So right now, let's not use a filter like that. Let's try as well the other filters and other ways to modulate the filter. Okay, none of these filters are going to sound well, mostly because of the fact that they take away some power from the sound. As I have said, well, I use the filters here quite rarely, but there are other things I can attach the envelope to. One of the more obvious things would be to try the pitch modulation. Using a pitch modulation, a pitch envelope like that sounds okay. Let me see if it fits the kick drum. Okay, now when I have the kick drum playing in the background, I don't feel like this would sound good. Let's try also attaching the pitch envelope to wavetable position. Which sounds way more interesting. And this is something I'm gonna keep. If it goes in that way, my track is going to sound soon like something from Scala area, very futuristic and industrial techno. I will hope it's not going to, well, sound like that. I still would like to make the track more atmospheric instead of like futuristic, but this still sounds sick. Let me try using the same pitch envelope on the second oscillator. But here it doesn't seem to work that well. The same envelope could be tried now on to the warping. I can also try volume, automating the volume. That isn't gonna work well too. Okay, what else could I try to modulate? Let me see. The sub oscillator is not going to make any sense. I'm not gonna use it. We have already tried wavetable positions, volume levels, amounts of warping. Filters are not going to be interesting. At last, because I don't think I'm gonna attach anything more to the second envelope, let's try quickly an LFO. A typical thing to do with an LFO would be to modulate the pitch in a rather fast way, but in a small amount. The LFO like that doesn't work either. Or I can create a simple rhythmic gate effects by using the same LFO on the amp. But this doesn't sound good. I would like the sound to be more, well, static. I guess that's everything when it comes to the wavetable. I will check this out in just a second, but now let me return to the MIDI clip. One thing I didn't try yet is to play the sound with a chord. Let's add the kick drum. Make the sound shorter. And yes, because of a very short release, the sound itself is going to cut pretty quick too. When we play this lead with the kick drum, it gives a quickly it gives an impression that this sound is too dry. To change that, I need to add some reverb to this lead sound as well. I will already add it with the parallel processing chain like that. But I will swap the stock reverb with a hybrid one. Let's see what type of reverb will sound better. Maybe a shorter reverb coming from the convolution like that is going to be better. Not necessarily. This already makes the sound less dry, but I wonder whether I should, well, maybe return to the volume envelope to add some release. No, I don't think so. So to make the sound less dry, the only thing I will want to use now is the reverb. And let's keep the reverb like that, because for now what is more important is to, well, see if there is nothing to add in the wavetable and to either change the melody or play chords with this sound. I just adjusted the length of the sound more precisely. The fact that this note maybe is not perfectly in the grid, meaning that the note doesn't end exactly in the end of the first beat. It really doesn't matter. No one is going to hear that anyways. So now let's try changing the pitch of this once again and maybe playing a chord. The problem is that right now I adjusted the pitch of the sound well using my ears, but I'm not exactly sure if that is within the key of the track. So to find the key of the track, well, probably I would have to take a look into the kick drum to see the frequency of the low end of the kick drum. So let's bring the spectrum. And in theory, the low end peaks at A sharp, 0. So again, just in theory, the key of our track should be A sharp, whether I play the note, the lead sound here with an A sharp 0 or A sharp 1, A sharp 2. In theory, this should sound good. So now I will pitch up our synthesizer to A sharp, according to what I have seen in the kick drum spectrum. Let's see what it's going to sound like. Because it sounds well, we could say that we can write all the melodies and sounds using the A sharp as a root note, so I can now use the scale highlight feature and try writing something in minor. And as you can see, as I pulled up the A sharp minor scale, the G sharp note that I used previously is also inside of that scale, so playing a G sharp on this lead sound will also sound good with the kick drum. Playing anything that's highlighted now by Ableton is in theory going to sound well with the kick drum, maybe not only in the theory, but also in practice, from what I can personally hear. Now I'm gonna try to play a chord. Let's add the pad sound instead of the kick drum, because I want to build an atmosphere. And I will also turn down and volume this pad, this lead sound. Alright, the first note of the chord will be here. Let's try adding one more note. And I don't think that's necessary. In theory, the second note could be a bit shorter or longer. But the lead is going to sound well enough if both notes are of the same length. Okay, with the kick drum, the lead sounds like that. Maybe one more thing I'm gonna do is to create a different pattern for the lead, because I would like to fit the lead into the beat more. Maybe we shouldn't play this lead right from the beginning of each bar. Maybe some offbeat would be cool. Somewhere here it sounds pretty well. I can maybe enhance the rhythm by playing another note offbeat, just like that. But I'm not sure if any extra note in the MIDI clip is going to help. Maybe it would be better if it was some sort of a one-shot effect. Yeah, I guess we will keep it simpler. Yeah, thank you. Greetings from Łódź, Poland as well. All right. Yeah, I didn't think of making a like futuristic lead like that, but now I ended up with this sound and I'm trying to fit that into the beat. Maybe it would be better if this sound was a bit darker. But it's time for a little break. Let's move away from the lead sound just for a second because I was mentioning that I have still some equalization to do in the hi-hats. So for a break, let's keep equalizing the hi-hats here. Actually, there is also a reverb to be equalized. So yeah, unfortunately in that area we still have quite a lot of work to do. What I should begin with, maybe let's tackle something simpler that is equalizing the hi-hat sounds that don't have a reverb added. So let's start with the hi-hat 4. Later, for that lead sound I've just created, I have an idea that I'm gonna try to create some call and response with the main pad sound. Maybe I can sidechain the pad sound to that lead, something like that. I'm gonna see. Yes, from what I can hear, this fourth hi-hat is still very quiet in the beat. Basically, I also can't hear any difference in the sounds when the hi-hat is on and off. So there is a high chance they're equalizing this hi-hat, single hi-hat is not going to make any sense. That would continue the series of EQ moves that will make the whole percussion sound a bit darker. Uh, Again, I'm using a low pass filter on this time a single hi-hat sound, not on the whole percussion group. I think it's a cool idea to pronunciate this hi-hat just a bit by using a high shelf filter like that. Alright, that makes the high shelf filter adjusted. Let's try using also a low shelf one. It's not going to make that much sense. Well, it's natural to not hear any change, to hear a smaller change in the sound when we are equalizing, yes, the quieter frequencies of the hi-hat sound, that is the mid frequencies. So what's left is to try using a peak filter to again find something that maybe should be boosted or cut. Alright, nothing here. And I don't feel like cutting anything either. Equalizing single hi-hat sounds like that, well, it's going to be much simpler and faster than equalizing the whole hi-hats groups. Well, one could argue if maybe I'm not being too detailed about equalization like that. Maybe it's also another part of my perfectionism. But yeah, as we could see earlier, equalizing the whole hi-hats group gives like 70% of the whole result. So equalizing single hi-hat sounds now is going to give less maybe interesting or important results. Let's check out the first hi-hat. What did I do here? a high-pass filter is not going to work. What about a high-shelf filter is not going to work. Let's see what about the low-shelf one. Hello, Underdive. Yeah, I think it will be quite easy to catch Sunday streams well because I'm trying to keep the schedule regular. YouTube algorithm is not showing your any favors, man. Never shows your new videos on my front page. If I didn't have notifications turned on, I would probably have missed the video today. It sometimes indeed happens that well. To see all the videos and to get all the infos, you have to turn on the notification bell and etc. There's not enough space in the YouTube front page to squeeze every video. You went into the stream in a bit unfortunate moment because a half hour ago I was making another lead sound in Ableton Wavetable. This is a bit more entertaining than equalizing the hi-hats, but soon we will return to that sound. Okay. It's one more. Now let's see the picking filters on that hi-hat sound, whether I need to boost or cut anything. Did you already watch the video with Exophora, Anti-Dive? Okay, I don't feel like I want to cut anything here. In the end, what we have, the second and third hi-hats, this is something that I'm gonna equalize later. Halfway through, where Exophora asks if he can swear on your channel. Yeah, I think that 20 minutes later, there will be a moment where Exophora says shit on the video, and later he apologizes for that. It's a pretty funny part I didn't cut. Okay, let's return to the lead sound I'm having here. I wanted to make sure that I don't have anything to change in the wavetable itself. We were playing this lead sound with, I think, the kick drum. And maybe a pad sound. To hear the lead better, we will turn off the kick drum. Once again, I will take a look into the wavetable to make sure that I don't want to change anything here. We didn't want to use the sub oscillator. All the Robin settings were already adjusted. We tried out using a envelope here that I'm using now to automate the wavetable position. And yes, automating volume position controls, whether it's Ableton or Serum, is a very easy way to make sounds a few levels, let's say better by a few levels. It's easy to make more complex sounds by just using an automation or modulation on the volume on the wavetable position setting. If I didn't use the LFO, the envelope here, the sound would be much less interesting. So I can imagine that if I wanted to arrange the track, if I'm making a build-up or something like that, I already have an idea for that, so I can make that already happen before I forget it. Let's add 16 bars of empty space, and let's add the beats, the lead sound somewhere here. What I can do is I can automate this pitch envelope in a way that at first I want to modulate this part of an envelope, but maybe I have to automate the value here. How can I modulate this sound is that whenever I have a breakdown, I can just turn off the envelope like that. And when the drop comes, I engage the envelope modulation. Let's keep the sound like that. But I want to automate anything here or to change something in the sound. Probably not. I tried out everything already I can. So what was the most important thing in that lead sound is to at first adjust the reverb. So now we are going to fine-tune the reverb settings to make the sound not as dry as it was before. Let me at first find the type of reverb that is going to sound okay. Maybe let's just play the kick drum. And once again, the shimmer algorithm works best for me. I like this kind of reverb. I'm using it quite often. Thank you, Golden Bytes. Yes, previous recordings of a stream will not disappear for quite some time. So you can see the track creation process right from the beginning, from the blank Ableton template. All right, since I've picked the reverb algorithm, again, the settings that will change the sound the most is, in my opinion, the order of adjusting the reverb should be following. At first I adjust the size, then the tamping, maybe the pitch setting, and the reverb length, something like that. A rule of thumb that seems to work quite often, quite well, is if we have a short sound, you can use a long reverb. If this sound was longer or played more often in a more repetitive way, the reverb should be shorter. So now to fill the beat, I'm playing this sound only once every maybe beat or bar. Yes, once every bar. I can keep the reverb longer. Now with both pitch and shimmer, what we are going to do with these two knobs is that we can pitch up or down the reverb slightly. The pitch setting naturally. Thus the pitch of the reverb adjusted, but the shimmer control is like a dry wet control for that pitch. What does it mean? If the shimmer is set to 100%, we are going to hear only a pitched up part of the reverb. If the shimmer is set to 0%, the pitch setting is not going to change anything. So let's see if I should mix with the reverb a copy of the reverb that is pitched up or down. So I'm setting the shimmer to 50% and I will try out different values of pitch. And I think I'm not gonna use the shimmer feature of this type of reverb, so we will keep the pitch of the reverb default. And the remaining knobs will be less important to the sound, maybe with an exception of both pre-delay and stereo. It is good to play with the pre-delay right now, so we can, well, shift the delay, the reverb in time to give it the sound more rhythm. That's the pre-delay. Now onto the stereo knob. I think let's make the sound more focused. The reverb is definitely a bit too powerful now. One of the ways to make the reverb sound less powerful is to actually use the stereo knob. Let's turn down the width. Let's make this lead more narrow. These three remaining controls in the hybrid reverb effect are going to give the smallest difference in the sound. Let me see if they are worth adjusting or not. And that would be the last thing to adjust in the hybrid reverb effect, aside from the volume of the reverb itself. Now, the feedback setting is not going to also do anything good to the sound. So it seems like the last things to adjust is the length and, well, the volume of the reverb. Let's keep the reverb like that. The last thing, that is the volume. I'm usually used to using a separate utility for that, and I keep the volume faders here for any additional automations later. But actually, before adjusting the volume of the reverb, let's adjust more precisely the volume of the synthesizer itself. Since the dry sound is now adjusted in volume, I can return to setting the volume of the reverb. Let's see what does the reverb like that is going to sound like with, again, the pad and percussion. And I'm not sure, this lead should be a bit more aggressive. Definitely the problem is that the lead is now too bright. Maybe pitching it down will be an easy fix for that. But the lead sounds well with the volume just like that, with the pitch just like that. Okay, we will pitch down one of the notes here, that makes the sound being better, exactly. So let me play around with the melody a bit more. With the melody, it's just 2 notes in the MIDI clip, and it shouldn't be called a melody. Maybe distorting the sound quickly, it's not going to hurt. Just for the sake of trying something out. A quick erosion like that, maybe it's going to make this lead fit better. And yeah, this makes the lead sound better, yes. So I think the lead will have to be distorted later in some way. But before I start distorting the lead more, well, I will return to the equalization of the hi-hats. What we didn't equalize yet is, let's see, the hi-hat 2 with the reverb. The hi-hat 3 plus reverb, and that's it. So it makes 3 sounds to equalize, because actually the same reverb is the same reverb with the exact same settings. It's just added to the third hi-hat. So once I equalize the reverb coming from the second hi-hat, I'm gonna copy the same EQ settings onto the third hi-hat. Maybe I will actually start with EQing the third hi-hat. This hi-hat doesn't need a low-pass filter, a high-pass filter. No low-pass filter either. Show filters don't work either. Thankfully, EQing individual hi-hat sounds is a bit easier and faster. Nothing to cut, maybe nothing to boost either. Let's add a small boost here. This is rather for just emphasizing this short hi-hat more, so it will be a bit easier to hear that sound. Let me see if I need to boost anything more here. Probably there was nothing to cut anyways. This makes the hi-hat equalized. Now onto the reverb. Now I'm gonna to equalize the reverb sound only, coming from the third hi-hat, and as I have said, the same reverb is added onto another hi-hat sound. So once I equalize this, here I'm gonna just paste the same EQ settings onto the second reverb channel. Should another low-pass filter be used? I'm not sure. Let me... this is the whole percussion channel already playing. Yeah, let me think for a second if I want to make the reverb sound darker. Not necessarily. Once again, now using a high shelf filter. This will not work as well. And again onto the peaking filters. So as you can see, I have the exact same routine on equalization. I do the EQ like that always. Always and every time. There is some high frequency hiss in this reverb sound, so I'm gonna make a cut somewhere at 8K or 7K range. This helps making again the percussion sound cleaner. I'm gonna check out whether something needs to be cut more. So I'm using another peak filter. And I slide cut at 4K again, will clean the reverb even more. Okay, nothing more needs to be EQ'd in the reverb. So now I'm copying the EQ8 here, and I have the second hi-hat here with the same reverb here. In theory, I should pass the same EQ, and well, the reverb on the other hi-hat should be equalized as well. But actually, since from the second hi-hat, where the same reverb is applied, we have much more mid-frequencies coming from, and now when I think of it, I might need to make a boost here. So let me do that. And the last thing in the EQ here is to make a small cut, and it's 1.5K. Now the issue is that, again, there is still some low-pitched noise I can hear from the reverb here. And my goal is to get rid of that. Okay. And the reverb here is equalized too. Okay, EQ and the try hi-hat sounds, we will again leave that for a bit later. Or maybe for even another session, because my ears are already a bit tired, so it makes the equalization more difficult. Let's move back to a bit more creative part of making the sound. What did I want to do with this lead is that I wanted to distort it somehow to make the sound cleaner. Not cleaner. To make it more interesting and full, without even the erosion. Well, the track doesn't sound that industrial, so at least a bit of distortion could be useful. Let me see if the erosion should be on the dry sound, or maybe on the reverb only, or maybe on the on both. No, it sounds best when the dry sound is distorted only. So here on the dry chain, I'm gonna try to use a few more effects. Actually, we can quickly check out everything Ableton has to offer. And it's going to be pretty easy to rule out most of these effects from the beginning. Because, for example, yes, vinyl distortion most of the times doesn't sound good. Vinyl distortion sounds like that. I don't like the sound of the saturator. Let's get rid of that. What about the redux? The vinyl distortion sounds more interesting. The pedal also doesn't sound good. The overdrive neither. The dynamic tube as well. What about the drum bass? What's surprising is that in the end I think the vinyl distortion will sound best, even though I said in the beginning it's most of the times doesn't work. Seems like now we have an exception. Okay, at first let's put a lot of distortion so I can adjust the bandpass filter here. To add either even or odd harmonics, I don't remember. One of the parts of the vinyl distortion, I don't remember if that's the tracing mode or the pinch one, adds even harmonics, and the other part adds the odd ones. Now let's tell the amount of odd harmonics added. Yes, the pinch XY control adds odd harmonics to the sound. Alright. What about the even harmonics then? Let me see if using them, if adding them is going to sound well or not. Seems like I'm gonna add also some of the even harmonics in a smaller amount. For the lead, you can use an other octave or a bin trash too for that sound, but these are some. What are these? Some Max for Life devices or what? Because it's the first time I'm hearing either of these. I see. Nevertheless, well, I will see what these are later. Right now, I will not. I will keep working with what do I have here. Well, the vinyl distortion. Let me see once again if everything about that is adjusted. Okay, it sounds well. So in the end, this is how I'm gonna distort the lead sound to make it a bit fuller. It indeed helps to fit the sound better. Okay. What is left is to finish equalizing the hi-hats. There is just 2 or maybe 3 times I need to use an EQ. And then the lead sound should be finished. Maybe I would have to add again some compression, whether it's glue or just a bit of multiband compression to emphasize that sound further. Right now the lead sounds aggressive enough. Maybe I'm not gonna distort the reverb only, the reverb itself. And in the end, what we will have to manage yet is the rhythm between the lead sound and the pad. Because right now these two sounds don't flow with each other very much. The simplest thing I'm thinking of is to sidechain the pad to that lead sound, but this is something I'm going to look at in the next session. Actually, I don't know if the next stream will be tomorrow or next Sunday, because my plan is to live stream twice per week. And I was thinking that, well, if I want to have another stream this week, it would be the Monday. I could do that on the Monday. We will see. So if someone has any questions right in the end of the stream, this would be the best time to ask that. And if not, I'm going to finish for today. What do you think about kick EQ for more brightness on leads? What exactly do you mean? Do you mean, for example, cutting the high end from the kick drum to make more space for the lead sound, or what it is? What equalizing the kick drum should have in common with the lead sounds? In that way. I don't think it's necessary here. The kick drum, if I listen to the kick drum in solo, it already doesn't have a lot of high end. As you see, for example, in the equalizer here, I already made some high frequencies cuts, and I could say the same thing about, for example, the distorted reverb. The distorted reverb already has the high frequencies removed, and then overall the kick drum feels more mid and low frequencies. Let's see again on the spectrum, what does it look like? And on the other hand, the lead sound we have here already has enough of high frequencies, so I don't think there's a need to cut high end, even more high end from the kick drum. There's already enough space in the high end for the lead. Alright, so that would be everything for today. Let's just make a note that here on the lead, I want to add the compression and an OTT, because that will be later definitely useful to pop the reverb, to make the reverb more audible in the mix. But again, still some separation from the pad sound will be useful, because very soon if I'm going to have a loud reverb and long reverb in the lead sound, this will clash easily with the pad sound I have. Yeah, thank you for watching as well, Mr. 50033. And see you either tomorrow or on the next Sunday. I will think of whether I will make a stream tomorrow or not. And we will keep working on the track. Alright, see you.